I'm on now. So you all get to put up with me as I learn how to do this, but you'll decide whether you're happy you elected me as vice chair or not.
Motion to approve.
I'd like to open the meeting at the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency. We have a quorum, correct? You don't have to call roll or anything?
I'll do a roll call.
Okay.
Board members Velasco. Here. Calnan. Here. Wasserman.
Here.
Courtney.
Here.
Little. Here. Rogers. Here. Herrera. Here.
First up, I believe, is the consent agenda.
Public comment.
Public comment. Does anyone like to make no speakers for public comment? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda then.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Can I
Carries
just make
unanimously.
a clarification on the minutes for September? They're 2015, not 2016.
Thank you. That's right. It's not that late yet, is it? Okay. I think next up is the regular business agenda with a review of the fiscal year budget.
Yes. Thank you, Chairperson Courtney. So I'll make this brief because a lot of this is a repeat from the budget workshop. So today we're just here to present the draft final budget, I guess you could call it. There's still going to be, I guess it won't be the draft final, but the draft that will be presented with some tweaks to the governing board in June. So as mentioned in the budget workshop, one of our biggest objectives for next year is to acquire some land with the fees we're starting to collect. And we're in negotiations with several landowners at this time, including the Richmond Ranch Trust, the rest of the Pratt & Whitney and the rest of the UTC property, and Creighton University for the Cherry Flat property, and also Lamont, which is not on the list. We're hoping to have Clara Park enrolled in the reserve system next year, and the Pacheco Creek mitigation site, which is a Caltrans donation to the Habitat Agency. We're going to try to execute some additional Burrowing Owl management agreements, do more Burrowing Owl management agreement negotiations with Moffett and the Guadalupe Gardens. We're going to do more restoration projects to continue with the stay-ahead provisions of both the Habitat Plan and the RGP. Submit more grant applications, coordinate and solicit funding from PG&E, state and local agencies. We also met with the High-Speed Rail Authority recently and trying to coordinate advanced mitigation with them also. Work with the NGO community to secure foundation monies. Start more in-depth and intensive negotiations with the regional boards for the 401 certification of the regional general permit. We're well on the way to completing the application process for the RGP. We might even get it done before the end of this year, but just in case we don't, it's on there. We have to, as I've explained in past meetings, we have to do a in-lieu fee program as part of our RGP process, and that has to be approved by the interagency review team, which is made up of the wildlife agencies and the water regulators. And that should take a couple years, unfortunately, to go through that process. It's the same process that mitigation banks go through. Develop an online interactive species monitoring database. We're negotiating a land management agreement with OSA now for Coyote Ridge, and hopefully we'll have that done early next year. Continue to do species monitoring. We're going to start looking out at 5-year projections for revenues and expenses. Execute an agreement for endowment investment services and management. At the June governing board meeting, Bob Spencer of Urban Economics is going to present some proposals to the board about who to go with, either the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is a entity, sort of a creation of the federal government, or the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And so there'll be a discussion with the board on what is the best path to take in terms of endowment investment. And then something that we'll be bringing to the governing board is also increasing PSE application fees. So the 16-17 draft budget gives the Habitat Agency the financial resources necessary to accomplish the goals and objectives outlined above. So highlights, proposed budget projects a surplus of $384,995. I'm sure it's going to be to the dollar. So, if fee projections and revenue projections are correct, we will be able to put in $12 million will be allocated for land acquisitions. This is a bold number. Habitat Agency anticipates $8 million in grant awards, so we're saying $2 million in Section 6. That's the federal one specifically for HCPs. And Water District has a grant program where they've allocated $8 million to help the Habitat Agency implement the plan. And we're hoping to get somewhere in the $3 to $4 million range from them. And then Wildlife Conservation Board has said they would match a Section 6 grant if State Department of Fish and Wildlife would approve such a match. And we're also in the discussions with the Bureau of Rec, which helped fund the Coyote Ridge acquisition. To the Central Valley water projects, they have to mitigate for endangered species impacts, and even though that's over in the Central Valley, I guess a lot of the water from there comes here, so somehow there's a nexus that they can spend money here. I'm not sure how that works, but I won't complain. Yeah. We will be adding one new staff person, and this is kind of exciting, and also Board member Rogers brought up, well, what happens if the economy starts not to go so well? And in this last budget highlight is certainly an area where we're really ramping it up in terms of budget. We're probably going to end up spending about $625,000 in conservation strategy implementation, and as you can see, we're projecting to spend $2.14 million in fiscal year 17, so we're really starting to ramp up, and a lot of that is with land management expenses with enrolling Coyote Ridge. If we do acquire Lamont or Richmond Ranch, one of the other properties, we'll have land management costs associated with that, same with Clara. And we're starting to do more with burrowing owls, and restoration is very expensive from a design standpoint and a construction standpoint. And if we ever did start to have financial problems, which would mirror what's going on in the region, then this is one area where we would unfortunately have to scale back our expenses. This gives you an idea of the summary budget. And this is on page, should have wrote this in my notes. This is on page 8 in your, no, excuse me.
84.
Let's see, where is it? It looks like I have an old copy of this booklet. So, there it is, sorry, page 4. It's in page 4 of the booklet. And it lays out what we project our beginning fund balance will be as of June 30th, just a little more than $7 million from general revenues and $855,000 from special revenue fees, for a total of just slightly over $8 million. Estimated revenues, which is land cover and nitrogen, $5.3 million. specialty fees just under 4.5 million, and then we'll be contributing almost 1.3 million to the endowment for a total of 11,080,000.
Excuse me, through the chair,
Yes.
if I may. The numbers he's referring to are not what's appearing on the screen here.
Okay.
This is televised. This is recorded, broadcast, whatever the proper term is. And I'm just thinking for those people following what you're saying, is it possible to get, you're referring to what page in your report right now?
4.
Okay, because what's on the screen now is
Oh,
page
it's
page 84.
8 number, sorry, that's 8 for the slide, page 8 for the slide, and it's page 4 in the booklet. So it's the, sorry for the confusion.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, my fault there on that one. Should have had no page numbers on the presentation. So just again, it's page 4 on the summary budget. It's a summary budget schedule, the operating budget handout. And what's showing on the screen here is slide number 8.
Excuse me, through the chair, Rose, that's also 58, 4 of 58. It's about a half dozen pages into beyond the cover page.
Okay.
Yep.
Nothing like having 3-page numbers, huh?
8.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any 4s, I'm seeing 50 and
Yeah, if you see 58, there's a little 4 right above it.
page 58? Yeah. Yeah, 58 looked like what you were talking about. I don't see a 4. That's fine.
Okay. So anticipated expenses are just shy of 3.7. We're going to add,
Right there.
for land acquisition reserve, the general fund will, from land cover fees and other general fund fees, we anticipate putting $8 million into the land acquisition reserve from that and $4 million from the special revenue fees, for a total of $12 million that'll be put in the land acquisition reserve. We're going to add another $400,000 to the rainy day fund, and then you can see that the up in estimated revenues, the 1.284 million for endowment is then shown as a transferred to the endowment fund. So the ending fund balance for June of next year is anticipated to be slightly more than 1.7 million. And this shows the estimated revenues, and nothing's changed from the budget workshop, but I can go over this in detail with anybody that, any questions related to this. It's showing estimated actual revenues for 15-16, and the reason for the discrepancy is the timing of when some of these private development projects and bridge projects will be coming in. We anticipated they would be coming in this fiscal year. They will be coming in next fiscal year. There's a couple large projects in the city of San Jose that we all thought were going to come in this fiscal year, that they would be pulling their grading permits, but they will not. So those are why our revenue projections are off. We also, the timing of the Section 6 grant changed from submitting an application in November to submitting an application in March, which meant that we would not, I'm being optimistic here, but would not receive a grant for a Section 6 until next fiscal year instead of this fiscal year. So this shows that the revenues we are projecting for mitigation fees, which is the $11,080,000, and then as I discussed earlier, we're showing anticipating $8 million in grant revenues, which are a wild card because grants are you're gambling that you're going to get them. So total estimated revenues, if you include grants, would be $19,080,000. We feel very comfortable that those the mitigation fee projections are correct based on discussions with the City of San Jose, the Water District, and Morgan Hill on projects that everyone thought was going to come in this year but are coming in next fiscal year. And but the trend we're seeing is that revenues are going to sort of flatten out starting next fiscal year, excuse me, and in the ensuing years we see revenues somewhere in the $3 to $5 million range. So we're having a big bump right now because of the growth in the region, but I do see it flattening out somewhat in the coming years.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm just looking back and forth from page 4 or 58, whatever we're calling it, and then to the slide. And so when I look at the total subtotal for mitigation fees, 11 million, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. And I look back at estimated revenues on page 4.
Yes.
It looks, that total that I'm looking at, 11,080,000,
Yes.
that's a sum of those of those to the left, right?
Correct.
General fund, special revenue, and
Correct.
permanent endowment. So, but when I'm looking at 11 million up here, that's just the mitigation fees. So,
Correct.
wouldn't that be plus those other things?
Yeah, we didn't add the grants into this. Yeah.
I'm confused.
Yeah. We're just looking at what we thought would be mitigation, true revenues as opposed to grant revenues, which we can't anticipate unless we absolutely get the grants. So our real revenue projection is $11,080,000, but if we do get the grants, we're anticipating it to be $19,080,000. But we won't know if we get the grants until the check's in the mail.
No, I totally get this.
Yeah.
This projected,
Yeah.
the slide up there, it's,
Yeah.
I'm trying to, how to reconcile that with the numbers in the bottom page.
Okay.
It seems like you'd have to add grants onto that 11.
Well, they don't add the grants because they're speculative.
Yeah.
No, but it's, how do you get 11 million here when you
Subtotal of all
Yep, and 11 million there.
the estimated revenues above.
Yeah,
it's saying endowment, but you're adding endowment and special revenue and all of this, and that's the 11 million. That's why I just asked you, said I'm right, that's what you did. But up here, you're saying the 11 million is just the mitigation fees.
we didn't pull out endowment so the endowment would get deposited into an endowment account.
So
Yes.
I see where my colleague is going with this, is that when looking at the numbers, that how you've presented the wetlands mitigation fee, that adds up to 11 million. However, when you look at page 4, taking out the endowments, you come to just a shade above 9.
Gotcha.
So
Thank you.
the question is, how do you reconcile the 9 and the 11 in the revenue that you presented before us?
The endowment will go into another account. It won't be available for offsetting expenses or for, but it's still part of the revenues that we collect. So the endowment is, yes, Jason, go ahead.
Okay, so I think what we're seeing from the slide is taking into an account the endowments
Yes.
that goes into the different mitigation fee
Correct.
line items.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, correct.
Thank you, Jason.
And it will be pulled out. It won't be available to buy land or to, right, but it is still revenue we collect. Yeah.
And I do have a follow-up question to that, is that obviously, as you were saying, the grants funding is speculative at this point in time, but obviously, depending on how much we receive in grants, if it being 2, 5, or 8,
Yeah.
you'll come back at a future point in time to adjust the budget. to be able
Absolutely.
to-
Absolutely. So we'll know if we get Section 6 this summer, early fall. And that'll determine whether we can get Wildlife Conservation Board funding. We'll probably have a pretty good idea on whether we're going to, what we're going to get from the Water District too. I was just talking to Water District staff last week about their grant program. They're still developing sort of the process for releasing those funds.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I just, in terms of the process we're going through, there's an Excel spreadsheet in the book. It's page 51 of the packet. And so the numbers, such as you're showing up here in terms of the total $19 million, that's what you're going to be asking us to approve in the budget. These other slides that you've been discussing give us sort of more detailed, differentiated look in terms
Correct.
of what we might expect. And then can you explain how you would, make sure as we go through the year that as the revenues come in or don't come in, just to make sure we don't wind up, you might have budget authorization for 19 million, but if you don't get it, that
Oh, yeah, if we don't get it, we won't be buying any land. I won't take out a mortgage.
And if I remember from the budget workshop, you said that the sort of committed costs that we have are well within just the base revenues that we're expecting, correct?
Correct.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So this slide here, which, let me see if I can correspond to what page that would be in your book. So this is 63 in the book. There's some corrections to this one that I want to bring to your attention. So we're anticipating estimated actual administrative expenses to be not 1,012,000, but 981,000. We're also, because we've had to rely on, and this is where adding the staff person I think is going to be a big cost savings. We've had to have, we've had a contract employee, a person who used to work for the redevelopment agency for Morgan Hill actually has helped us out on a lot of administrative stuff as well as ICF. And we sort of estimated that we spent about $65,000 in contractual administrative services, which with the addition of the new staff person, a lot of that's going to go away. Not all of it, but vast majority of it. We also estimate actual technical permitting support to be at about $310,000, so a little bit less than what we requested last June and what we estimated actual at the budget workshop. And then the estimated actual conservation strategy implementation will be more than what we requested in June of last year, and more than the estimated actual to be. We're estimating it to be about $675,000. So total estimated actual operating budget will be, we're estimating, and this is a high estimate, it may come in less than this, but we figured I'd go with a high estimate. $1,966,000. So about 58,000 more than we, yeah, correct.
Year and close,
Year-end
okay.
close.
Yeah. And I didn't have time to update these slides because
So they're not correct.
they went out to your,
They don't
in the
reflect
board packet, so I just figured I'd do it orally today. So I think, talking, Jill and I spent a lot of time going over this, so the total estimated actual operating budget could be anywhere between 1.89 or 1,890,000 to slightly under 2 million. So we're not sure based on when invoices come in for some of the species monitoring and some of the work that the consultants are doing. Yes. Yeah. So turn to page 72 and 73 in your booklet.
There you go.
And that'll give you an idea. This is for, so 73 shows you what the estimated, it shows both 2015-16 and 16-17. So you can see it's wetland restoration and creation, so that's permitting, the design work, and the construction. So we'll be submitting a bid packet to the board in July, well, actually a contract to approve a contractor to do construction at Clara Park to restore a wetland and do some pond and wetland creation. That stuff's very expensive, and that's where you can see where a lot of the expenses are. So what you're seeing, so what the costs are starting to come in, and why you're seeing an increase is sort of implementing the plan, doing appraisals, doing phase 1 environmental assessments of the properties we're hoping to acquire, doing the species monitoring. So it's the conservation strategy being implemented. Yep.
Just to, which was 72,
Yep.
is 16, 17. But
Yep.
you're talking about an additional $100 and some thousand in 15, 16
Yes.
over the projection. So I just wanted to see the detail of what those expenses
Yeah,
are.
those, so when
Additional
when we did the budget in June, I hadn't thought about, to do an appraisal on the UTC property, I hadn't anticipated doing that. That cost just under $50,000. Then with the acquisition of the Coyote Ridge property, we had to start doing plant and butterfly surveys. And that's something that I hadn't thought about in June either. So, and that's $90,000. Not all of it will be expensed this fiscal year. Some of it will be next fiscal year. We had to get a handle on the number of plant occurrences that were out there, because the way the plan works is you have to have advanced mitigation for the plants. So before you can impact a plant occurrence, you have to have so many protected. So there's several projects in the county right now that are impacting plant populations. The water district will be impacting plant populations. So we needed to get an understanding of how many occurrences we acquired out at Coyote Ridge. So that's where the expenses are starting to come in. And I hadn't thought about some of that stuff last June. So that's why there's that discrepancy in that area.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we believe that the final agency budget will be submitted to it will be submitted to the governing board on June 16th, 2016. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Rogers.
I do have just a couple questions about specifically the expenses and particularly the new staff hire. If you could kind of speak to the position of the principal planner. I know that you have a budget request of about approximately $107,000 and a reimbursement for auto of about $4,800, and obviously the medical benefits of that position as well. Kind of, if you could kind of break that down to me as what that role and responsibilities and how that's associated with that individual's salary.
Yes.
Does that person receive overtime, comp time? Because if there's going to be a lot of interaction with the co-permittees and or special agencies, and them being required to do a lot of off-site work that may take them beyond their scheduled hours, have you budgeted truly enough in for them to be able to?
No comp time, no overtime. Yep. And the total salary represents so we get pay in lieu of benefits. So that number includes, the total number would include the benefits.
Okay.
So the salary is on here at 107, and then the benefits would be 45, and then the car allowance. So I think when you add it all up, it's like a little over, let's see, it's 157. So that's the total amount.
Okay. And have you kind of fact checked this across other, obviously, agencies within Santa Clara County to make sure that you're actually able to be competitive for getting the right individual to come into the organization to do the duties, given that you're trying to give additional capacity to yourself and obviously to the principal program manager?
Yes, yes. I looked at what the county and the city of Morgan Hill and our friends to the north, the East Contra Costa Conservation Plan, we're paying sort of that senior planner, principal planner level position. Also, I looked at what OSA was paying. And OSA doesn't have that position, but they are advertising for a planning manager now, which does pay a little bit higher than that position, as it should. Does it seem low to you?
I do after.
As to me.
It does. Just given the amount of responsibilities and duties that you're going to be asking this individual to participate in with a number of different jurisdictions and being able to truly implement the plan with peak staffing or consultant services. So that's going to be a significant ask of one individual. And obviously living in an area where the cost of living is quite high, want to make sure that you're putting yourself in an economically competitive situation to where you don't lose out on what it may be your number one candidate to fill your needs. So maybe looking at this too much on the lower end of the side than, putting ourselves truly in the middle.
Okay. It would mean bumping the salary for the principal program manager too.
Contraction is definitely an issue, or compaction, excuse me, is definitely an issue when it comes to that. And obviously, there's a limit.
I'm open to doing that. I guess I could do a more formal salary survey. I did do one for when the principal program manager was hired, and I thought that salary was competitive, but I can look again, and if we have to do an adjustment, we can. That's for sure. Yeah.
I leave that up to the rest of the board to weigh in on whether or not we should have a formal survey or see what comes of what he's put in the budget, and if we actually receive many inquiries into the position when it goes live for recruitment, and then make a determination thereafter.
Can I? My question, I guess, to you and council is. We don't really have position specifications, adopted salary ordinance, things like that, right? So I'm assuming that your staff is something that you have the authority to set under the policies that the board's adopted so far?
That's generally correct. We do actually have a specification, but we don't have a formal salary ordinance like you're probably accustomed to.
Thank you. Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you. Since you asked the question, I'm comfortable going down the road we're currently going down until our director comes back and says it's problematic. All of us are involved with various agencies, and salary setting is tough. To be the employer of choice is tough. The cost of living here is tough. All those things acknowledged. Our future revenues are unknown. Our future expenses are unknown. This is kind of a startup company that doesn't have any history.
They'll find its way.
As far as that goes, and getting a person there. I don't think any of us here believe in being penny wise and pound foolish as far as that goes. And so since the question was asked, my opinion would be to give direction to continue down the road you are, and if it's problematic, in finding somebody, that you come back to us requesting additional authorization. I think it's very important now with all the unknowns, the unknown grants. You jump from 11 million, 19 million, 8 of it is unknown grants. That's 40% of the projected revenue is unknown. That's scary.
Yes.
That's flat out scary. So that's my response to the question asked.
Yes, Member Herrera.
Yeah, I generally agree, but I think the chair might have been, maybe I'm reading into what you were asking, but is there some flexibility for the director? If, is there a percentage that he can have some flexibility if he gets a candidate? And I don't know what that'd be, 10% or something that he can move around. I would think, I'm trying to come up with a medium solution so that we don't have to wait for an implementation board or a board meeting to give them a little bit of flexibility. I would be in favor of that.
So it's entirely up to the board. If the board wants to indicate that they're comfortable with a range and provide that to the executive officer, that's certainly an option.
And
I'd support a small, small additional.
Was that a motion through the chair?
I move giving him a 10% range,
Second.
10% additional. He needs it.
And just
That's a
to
pretty
just
big
to
range.
add, we in the advertisement for the program
I just threw it out there if you
manager,
have another idea.
we had a range of
10% is
105
$17,000.
to 125 with the with the job that Tara filled, we had a range of 105 to 125. So and this job is sort of tearing off of that job description. So
Compaction's an issue.
yeah.
You make it a lesser, I just threw that out there. I just threw it at a round number. It doesn't, it wasn't really
You don't
trying
want
to necessarily set the number. I'm just saying, give him some kind of range. Pardon?
You don't want to get too close to Tara. That position, rather, right?
And for the record, none of us can take that job now.
I don't know what Tara's salary is, but whatever
The next position in this schedule here.
Yeah.
I just closed my
Yeah.
budget. What is
So
that?
Leslie, why don't
Yeah.
you offer up a
Yeah.
I personally think that we should
Yeah.
just follow the
it?
executive director's recommendation and not be surprised if it comes in low, but I think you ought to go out and see what you can get first.
Right.
That's how it would be, and I don't think that we should micromanage you within 10% or whatever. I think you can come back and ask for additional authority if you need it, and, we'll work with that. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, I'm okay too, but I was actually not thinking micromanage. I was actually giving him some latitude. So I think that, if there is a slightly larger parameter, if we feel comfortable with it, I think that would give him a little flexibility. But
Through the chair, a friendly amendment, if I may. Let's just split it and call it 5%. And on this issue, 5% leeway for the executive director. I'll throw that out as a suggestion, and we move on.
yeah, I would agree. And then, certainly he should try to go for the number he has right now, but then he knows he has a little flexibility if he finds his perfect candidate and he needs to go a little higher, that's all.
Thank you.
I do have one more follow-up question. I hate to dominate the time, but a couple questions for you with regards to the land acquisition reserve. Funds can be transferred into but not out of that land acquisition fund. Is that correct?
No, we could transfer. So let's say the goal wouldn't be to transfer monies out of there, but given the immediacy of landowners that want us or somebody to buy their land today, it would be expended by the end of the fiscal year, I imagine. Our goal is not to transfer monies out of there. I can't see a scenario where we would unless we were in 2008 all over again. Yeah.
The reason why I bring that question is obviously with many municipalities and jurisdictions that we're entering into a tough economic cycle, we're forced to look at how we're appropriating certain funds within our budgeting and developing a strategy that looks at a percentage reduction over time to where we're able to keep our books balanced. So my question is really driving to, do we have a strategy? Do we have a plan in place that, once again, we can't predict the future? The cycle's strong. We hope it remains strong. However, if that does turn on its head, how are we thinking about approaching a balanced budget that still allows for administrative resources and support, still being able to meet the basic goals of the plan and being able to implement the plan simultaneously, so that we're not setting ourselves back to step one in 2012, 2013.
Right, yes. So there's nothing restricting us from monies that are, so the endowment, that's That's a lockbox. That's like Social Security. We don't touch that. By the end of, yeah, right. What? Yes, yeah, probably not.
What's it from your lips to God's ears?
The Al Gore lockbox, right? Wasn't that it? So, forget what I just said. But the endowment we don't touch. We can't. That's the future of this agency 50 years from now. At the end of next fiscal year, we'll have $1 million in the reserve fund or rainy day fund. But nothing's restricting us from, if we had to, tap into the land acquisition fund. We're only setting that aside for land acquisitions to let you know that's what our priority is for next fiscal year, is to spend the fees that are coming from your respective entities through public and private projects, that we're going to spend it on land, because that's what we're charged to do. But if there was, if we had a couple million in the fund and 2008 struck again, there's nothing restricting us from tapping into that. But I'm hoping we could ride it out through whatever fees would trickle in and the $1 million we'd have in the reserve fund. And we'll add more money to the reserve fund in the next fiscal year. Or I should say 2 fiscal years from now. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. So do we have a vote with the motion, the friendly amendment? Where did that finish?
I accepted your friendly amendment. Is that just a sub, that's not for the entire approval? It could be, I guess.
I'm going to try something here. My sense is that, based on some of the answers we got previously, that the numbers that you presented are actually, you provided one item which you said would actually be less. Are you asking us to amend the budget lower based on that number, or was that just sort of an informational piece for us?
Oh, I'm sorry. For what? Sorry,
It was on the bar chart.
Oh, those are all the changes?
Correct.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to get you the latest information that we'll present to the governing board. I wanted you guys to have all the correct numbers.
So
Yes.
on this, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
this is
in
the corrections?
response to the question that Member Wasserman raised and everything, since this is a review and recommendation to the governing board, you could wrap everything into one motion.
So I'd move approval with that change and any other amendments people want to make. But I just want to make sure we've seen the final. So we heard some verbal things that were
Yes.
changes from what we're looking at here.
Yes.
But all of that is contained in
Correct.
here. There's nothing verbal that isn't written in here somewhere. Okay.
No, nothing. I'll bump, I think it's a good recommendation. I'll bump the salaries up 5%. And then,
Excuse me, through the chair, that you have the authority if needed.
their authority if
to
need be.
bump, not
Okay.
automatically bump.
Okay.
I'm giving you
Okay.
flexibility. You can, if
Okay.
you can get someone at the salary that you have
Best person,
set,
least
that is
expensive.
preferable.
Okay,
But if you need
perfect.
it, so you don't have to call another meeting of us. That's the only reason I'm thinking.
Okay, yeah. And again, there's a range associated with this of 105 to 125, so we can work within the range.
Yeah, I'm not trying to micromanage you at all.
No,
Just
no,
giving you some flexibility.
I'm not. You guys are just bringing up questions for me. I get it.
So I made a motion. I don't know if anybody seconded it, but,
Second.
okay, great.
You're moving the entire budget
I
with
moved the
that
entire
addition-
thing with
with the amendments
with the
noted.
yeah, accepting that friendly amendment from,
Thank you, and if this is
Discussion?
discussion, thank you very much. I should have done this probably, fellow members, I apologize, during consent, but since it relates to the budget, I think it's okay too, Madam Attorney. But items 3, 4, and 5, I just wanted for the record, because sometimes people look at this and it's misinterpreted. So just for the record, fellow board members, if you look at item 3 in the first paragraph, the end of the first sentence says, and increase the compensation by $266,000. We're not really increasing any compensation by $266. We're just renewing a new 2-year contract for $266. Then you go to item number 4, and it says increase the compensation by $206.
or renewing.
We're not increasing it by 206, we're extending another 2. But when you go to item number 5, and it says increase compensation by 70, it actually is increasing compensation by 70. So just for the record, as long as you agree,
Yes, I do.
okay, that's the clarification I wanted to make, that items 3 and 4 are not increasing compensation. It's simply a second amendment, if you will, to an existing contract. But item number 5 is in fact increasing
increase.
compensation over a 2-year period. And I think that's okay because it's part of the budget clarification. Thank you.
And all this is going to come back with one set of numbers, and it's all going to be
Oh, yeah,
put to the governing board,
yes,
because it is a little
Yes.
bit confusing. At least
yes, and yes. And I apologize for
And that wording that was just clarified by Board Member Wasserman, that language will be in here too? I think it should be in the final document.
Through the chair, I think that the language for 3 and 4 should be changed, and rather than and increase compensation by, I think it should be and approve a new 2-year contract for.
Yes, and the documents, the actual documents are clearer
say
than
that.
the
Yes.
summary.
Great.
I'm just saying,
Okay.
anybody watching or looking right now, they're going to say we've increased compensation for some people by 200,000, and we haven't. We've
Correct.
hired them for 2 more years.
It's
For
a
the
point
actual
well
documents,
taken.
it's clarified then.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. That's a different format than we've used in the past, and it will you will not see it again.
Any other discussion on the budget? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
And next up, I think, is your report.
Yes. So, just wanted to give you a little update on the RGP. We did a training for co-permittee staff. So all the folks that work for you on April 5th, we had about 60 people show up for that. From all the organizations that represent our agency. We're almost complete with developing an application package for submitting to be in compliance with the regional general permit. So what happens if a project comes in and they fall under the umbrella of the regional general permit, they have to fill out another application. And unfortunately, I'm hoping once these things are truly integrated, once we go through the IRT, they'll be truly integrated and there'll be one application. But right now there is 2 parallel processes, not in terms of fees, just in terms of applications. And they're almost complete, and there's a couple projects that are lined up, and I've gotten several phone calls from consultants about other projects that want to utilize, both public and private, that want to utilize the RGP. So that's good news. So just, there's a lot of verbiage here. I'm not going to get into it very much, but just to let you know about the Clara restoration. So the bid packet for construction is going to be released on June 3rd, and we'll be accepting bids from qualified contractors to do the construction work out at Calero Park. And this is to help with the stay-ahead provisions of the plan for wetland impacts. And it also helps with our project proponents with being able to use the regional general permit. The regional general permit requires that you have advanced mitigation to fully start using it. So it's important that we get this constructed this fall, and that's another reason why you see all that money being spent next fiscal year to do a riparian restoration and another wetland restoration project to sort of be able, as projects come in, they won't have to pay for something that's called temporal loss. So those would be additional fees the projects would have to pay, and they will also to be able to fully benefit from the regional general permit. And I bring this up that unfortunately we have to have a board meeting in July. Last year we canceled it. This year we cannot, because and because we have to go to construction in September because of all the, as Jason would know, being a planning manager, there's all the deadlines you have to comply with in terms of regional water quality boards and when you can do work in waters of the state and waters of the U.S. So we will be dewatering these sites in August and starting construction in September. So it's very important that we have the meeting in July, and I apologize for that. I was hoping we could do it in September, but I was told that you need 2 months to do the construction. So that's September and part of October. So the red letter date, and Ann knows this too, is October 15th. Sometimes you can ask for extensions on projects, and but we'll try not to do that. So that's why I brought this up. Tara, who's preparing the bid packet for us, said, please tell the board we need them in July. So that's why this is on the EO report. And also to let you know that we're doing what we're supposed to do. So I'd like to thank the City of Morgan Hill with the Public Advisory Committee solicitation. They posted it on their webpage and their Facebook page, and we had 5 citizens who expressed interest in serving on the PAC. We received 2 applications. One looks very promising, and we'll be accepting applications through June 30th. And then finally, I want to ask the board's advice on how to proceed with the City of Santa Clara City Place project and the City of Mountain View's North Shore Precision Plan. So we wrote comment letters on both those projects. The Mountain View project was for nitrogen, the impacts that the project would have by generating more trips. So the trip generation increases that that project would engender, and therefore would lead to more nitrogen deposition. So the way they did the factoring of how much nitrogen is deposited on our landscape, around 53% of the nitrogen is generated within the plan area. Therefore, our fees are designed to cover that delta. But 47% are generated outside the plan area, and I forget the exact number, but I think it's 27% of that amount, or 27% of the total comes from the non-participating cities. So the Mountain View CEQA document said that we don't need to do anything about it because the habitat plan is already taking care of the nitrogen problem, but we're only taking care of the amount that's generated within the plan area. So we're they basically said we don't agree with you, as happens a lot in CEQA documents. With the City of Santa Clara and City Place, they did address nitrogen in their that they are going. I don't know if they're going to do it through mitigation that they will initiate, or they'll do like Apple did with the Cupertino project. They'll write a check to us, and then we'll, through the voluntary contribution policy, and then we'll use that money to help manage the serpentine lands. But they are addressing it, but they're not addressing owls. And one of the things we've noticed is that the City of Santa Clara claimed that they did some sort of mitigation in the past for owls, that they bought 44 acres of land to mitigate for owls, and nobody can point to that land. Nobody can say this is the land that we've set aside for owls. They didn't pay into a mitigation bank like a lot of City of San Jose projects did. So they've said we've already done it and go away. So the mayor of Mountain View I met at Ken Schreiber's retirement party, Pat Shearwalter. So I know I can call her up and talk to her and ask her. But I was just wanting some direction from the board, and if there's any when you all have colleagues in these at these cities, if there's any suggestions you have or any outreach you could do.
Could I just ask a question? What does
Yes.
the CDFW say about that mitigation?
They wrote a comment letter about the owls and nitrogen for City Place. I do not know what they did for Mountain View, the Mountain View project.
City Place, what I'm thinking about.
Yes, yeah.
They said they already mitigated to some unknown area, some unknown site
Yes,
that nobody can prove.
Nobody can prove.
Or trace back.
yes.
So CDFW,
I'll ask Dave, but it came from, the letter came from Scott, I think, and that was submitted on the, NOI was submitted.
yeah, I mean, I don't see how you can, blow off CDFW and us.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you can do that.
Yeah. And I've got a call into the city of Santa Clara has set up a meeting with their staff to find out why they decided to do this. But this can be a closed session discussion too, and how we proceed. But just with any ideas, or if you guys can, if you know the mayor or one of the council members of the city of Santa Clara.
I did know the mayor.
I would like to raise just a point of knowledge for the board, in that with City Place, they have been having joint planning commission, city council hearing study sessions on the City Place project, discussing a variety of different topics, particularly the one that latest occurred, or will be occurring, I believe, next week, will be on the environmental impact report that they are preparing for that project. I would suspect by doing study sessions that they are moving forward with their project in a timely manner, given that they've already released their response to comments in their final EIR. So my question would actually be to council, in that I'll say that the writing's on the wall. Will there be any representation of the Habitat Agency at a public hearing in regards to our opposition to the EIR, or how they've analyzed the project as it relates to Burring House?
So I don't know if the executive director was aware of the timing and the hearings. I was not, but I think between himself, myself, and Tara, we can have some presence at that meeting and see what we can do to address it.
Agreed. And Tara did attend one of their workshops and addressed our concerns at that workshop. But this particular meeting I was not aware of, no.
Do we believe that there, and this may be something that we'll have to discuss around, as a closed session with the governing board, but if there would need to be any subsequent actions taken, if we believe that there's a significant impact that's being created on, obviously, an endangered species that's covered under our plan?
So legal action is always an option.
Not a good one.
Whose formal actions, right? The city of Santa Clara is taking the formal action. We're just collecting fees. We're not actually issuing a permit for this. Is that?
No. So our claim is that the project is impacting our ability to implement our conservation strategy. And they agreed on nitrogen. They disagree on owls.
Excuse me, through the chair, because they've already done something about owls?
Yeah.
That's what they're saying?
Claiming, yes. Yeah. But there's no evidence to suggest. So that's why meeting with their staff, I'm going to try to get some more information. But the feeling among everybody is that property doesn't exist. But I'm hoping that's not the case. But then maybe we can negotiate a owl management agreement with them and start to manage this mystery property for owls. So that's so there's a breeding pair that have been around Levi Stadium, and the golf course that's currently there is potential breeding habitat because of its proximity to the wastewater facility, and it's also foraging habitat. So given how the birds are getting crunched in, every little bit of conservation helps in that area of the county. But it's not just that site, it's kind of the cumulative problems that are happening for that bird.
Member Herrera.
I just wondering, is there a timeline on this? Is there is it important that we file something within a certain time period to have impact on this particular project?
Well,
Through the chair, when does this become a closed session item?
so I'm not aware of all the, I mean, there are timelines, but I'm not aware of what they are because I'm not really clear on what the status of the project is. We got the information just today, shortly from Mr. Rogers. So there's a lot of things we can't answer because we don't know. But if I may just extrapolate, it sounds like they haven't taken a final action yet if they're still having these hearings.
They haven't taken a final action yet. They're
Okay.
still dealing with their workshops, but they have released their final EIR in response to
Right.
comments.
But if they haven't taken a final action, then no timelines have kicked in. That's what I'm trying to get to. So with regard to the appropriateness of a closed session, yes, if we decide that there's something that we need to do that might be in the nature of litigation, but I think all of that's a little bit premature until we go back and figure out exactly what the status of the approval process is, have the opportunity to participate in the hearing that's coming up next week, and see where any discussions we might have go. So, if we're successful, then there's no need for a closed session, and if we're not successful, we will put a closed session on an appropriate agenda.
All right. I just want to kind of walk through some bigger concepts. So we are a multi-jurisdictional agency by choice, and we've come together. We have authority within our own jurisdiction. In the event that someone outside of this relationship has an impact that's been identified, it's an opportunity for them to buy into it, to mitigate, correct?
Correct.
But I don't understand our authority to challenge. They could choose lots of different mitigation without having to buy into.
Exactly, yeah.
So I'm
yeah.
a little bit unsure what we're talking about and what our role is as an entity with respect to challenging a finding and suggesting that.
So I think with regard to the Santa Clara situation in the burrowing owls, if they in fact are saying that they have mitigated for burrowing owls because they have a piece of property, that would be fine, except for the fact that it doesn't seem they can identify this particular property and prove that there's actually been any mitigation related activity. So it's not just, I mean, we have a particular interest because we are focused on the burrowing owls and we have this overall conservation strategy. But any member of the public could say, well, if you have done something with regard to burrowing owls, then you should be able to demonstrate and verify what it is you've done with regard to the burrowing owls. So that, I think, is the point that we're looking at pursuing.
And
But I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But to Leslie's point, though, it seems that our authority, our reach, only extends as far as our boundary or our area is concerned. Can we
Well,
go beyond that? And
Our reach as an entity is focused on what's in our boundaries, but anyone can question the status of the owls and whether or not certain environmental things have been complied with. You don't have to be, for example, a resident of the jurisdiction to question what the, something about an environmental impact report.
And-
So, thank you, because my issue was, is it our mission, our charter, to then challenge other jurisdictions about what they are doing?
So no,
Watchdog outside of our boundaries is what I'm.
well, so the I won't call it the problem. I say one of the issues or concerns is that the plan does identify burrowing owl habitat as extending beyond the area that's covered by the plan. So if you look at the maps in the habitat plan, it does show that the burrowing owl reach goes up on both sides of the bay, which, for example, is why we're doing some burrowing owl activity over in the Fremont Milpitas area at the Don Edwards Refuge. I mean, that's not technically
I see.
in our jurisdiction, but because the map shows the burrowing owls go up on either side of the bay, we have this kind of overriding interest in the burrowing owls. I mean, it's not our desire to be sort of a, watchdog, to use your term. That's not really where we're headed or what our interest is. But the whole burrowing owl process is sort of an integrated process. It doesn't stop at a particular boundary.
And if I'm not mistaken, just to help provide a little bit of clarity, is that in reading your first letter that was submitted to the city of Santa Clara, that there was a concern as it related to the cumulative effect on the burrowing owl population that did reside within our planned boundaries as well, given its proximity to a significant population in North San Jose, which is within the boundaries of our plan. So there's the indirect concern that we would potentially have under our reach or under our guise, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yep. And to answer sort of your second part of your question, Leslie, no, they don't have to mitigate through us. That's just an option. They could do something on their own, and we would not expect them to write us a check and mitigate through our plan, through the voluntary contribution. It's just as the stewardship responsibility they have as the lead agency. We believe that they may not be addressing through CEQA impacts to a species of special concern, so following the spirit of state law. For us, what they do, as Jason eloquently stated, it could indirectly affect our ability to implement the burrowing owl conservation strategy. And if there is a species that may go locally extinct on our watch, it could be the burrowing owl.
Rob, just real quick, at least, probably more than 2 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, a letter was sent from the state to some of these other northern cities. And I think that the intent of the letter was to kind of encourage them to think about a habitat agency, whether wanted to create something on their own or to join us. Has there been any more follow-up or anything like that from the state to these other cities saying, you guys still have impacts that need to get addressed?
Not that I'm aware of, yeah.
Any other questions on this item or anything else for the executive officer? I think we're supposed to, I'm not sure the proper parliamentary term, recess to the closed session before we adjourn. Is that correct?
Perfect.
Perfect. Appreciate the discussion. Well, I appreciate your discussion. You guys are, it's good to hear all the